welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with special guest Jennifer Skiff, and she's here today to share with us her new book, Rescuing Ladybugs, Inspirational Encounters with Animals That Change the World. Now, Jennifer is an award-winning journalist and best-selling author of the books The Divinity of Dogs and God Stories. For more than a decade, she traveled the globe as a correspondent for CNN. Passionate about animals and their welfare, she serves as a trustee, advisor, and spokesperson for charities around the world while working with lawmakers to create positive changes for animals. A recipient of the Environmental Medal Award, Jennifer lives in Maine and Australia. So let's welcome to the show, Jennifer Skiff.
Thank you, Marianne. I just want to start by saying that you are a treasure, and I'd like to thank you for all the good that you're doing in the world, because it's just amazing to see what you're doing yourself. So thank you very much.
Oh, my goodness. Well, that is a high compliment coming from someone who's making such profound changes in the way we view and treat animals, and I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Well, and so why don't we start at the beginning? Because there's so many beautiful stories and tough stories in your book, Rescuing Ladybugs. What inspired you to become interested in animals in the way that you are?
Probably it was just the fact that growing up in my family, we always had dogs and cats. And for me, when I was about 10 years old, my parents had a breakup, and we went through a really, really tough time. And I can honestly say that as my parents split and became partnered, there were 4 children kind of left standing there by themselves, and we had this dog named Sally, and Sally was everything to me. She was my mom, she was my best friend, just everything. And because of her, I connected. I knew the gift of dog, if you will. And then as I got older, I started rescuing and working with rescues. And it wasn't until I was about 33 years old, I think, where I was working for CNN and traveled to the country of Laos to research a book I wanted to write about the Vietnam War, where I ran across something that changed the way I thought about all animals and not just, dogs and cats and pets.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because, your book, I felt, and I know you get this kind of feedback as well, it's life-changing to read this book. We get a different view than I think what most people, think about when they are, there's a big group of people out there that love animals and respect them and are for animal rights, and there's some people that just might not be really aware of what's happening with the animals that share this planet with us.
Well, this book tells the stories of people who had an experience with another animal that affected them so profoundly that it caused them to act. And they're heroes in our world. And their stories, I try to keep the stories light, although there's an element of darkness to each one, because these people were stopped in their tracks by something they witnessed and decided that they couldn't look away from the situation. And in not looking away, they changed their life. They have gone on in the world to change the life for that species. Countless number of animals. And then we make the connection in the book about how in helping that one species, they've changed the world for the better for all of us. So I do like to hope, and I have received confirmation every day from people who are reading, when they say, I get it, it was hard, but this is an inspirational book. And that was the goal, is to let people feel empowered and inspired by other people's stories of helping animals.
Do you feel that that's why these stories are so important? is because it makes that connection with our compassion in animals?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know about you. I know that you're an empathic person, but, when we were young and we wanted to reach out to help sometimes an injured animal, or a dog on a chain is a perfect example. We didn't like it. We didn't feel good about it. Our instincts told us it was wrong. And yet there was always someone there saying, it's just a dog. Don't worry about it, or don't do it, or don't interfere with other people's business. And so I think it's really important that, we move forward. It does connect with people, because this book tells people it's okay to follow your instincts. It's better than okay. It's what you should be doing. And on the path to do what's right, you feel good.
Yeah. And it's interesting. And, I have to applaud you, because the thing is that you are just a prime example of how one person can make such a profound difference. I mean, in the things you do. And when you talk about, in the chapter about the Buddhists and the bears, I mean, that one really, I was crying when I was reading that. It was hard. But at the same time, it's such a powerful story, and I love what's happened with that. And I'd love for you to share a little bit about that for our listeners.
Well, thank you. Okay, so I was in Laos, and again, I was doing some research for a book. So I wanted to get the feel of the country and everything about it. It was 1998, and I was a CNN journalist at the time. So therefore, it's a communist government. I had to have a government minder with me who followed my every step, if you will. Showed me around, but, told me what I was and wasn't allowed to see or talk about. So I was taken to a cultural park to learn about the history of Laos and the war. And I was slowly making my way down a dirt trail at the park, and I had stopped to read a plaque about Buddha when my boyfriend yelled, Jenny, don't come down this path. And, of course, I did. And what I saw weakened my faith in humanity. It was black and white Asiatic bears, all, identifiable by the trademark cream-colored collar across their chest. And they were imprisoned in 5 cages, and ironically, 5 cages placed around a giant statue of Buddha. And Buddha is all about compassion. It's the religion, if you will, of that country. And yet, here was this horrific thing I was seeing. They were on concrete slabs and in bell-chambered-like iron prisons. And the bears, the cages were so small that the bears' bodies were pushing through the spaces. And they had no protection from the sun. Their water was green, and I didn't even know if they could reach it. It was horrible. It was as horrible as you get. So I walked up, and I stood before one of the bears, and he was crying and rocking, and he had one paw pushed completely into his mouth. And our eyes locked, and we connected. And in that moment, he transferred to me his physical suffering. And that's when he reached out, and he basically, he said without saying, look at my paw. He reached out and he showed me his paw. And so it had blisters all over it. And I asked the government minder what was wrong with his paw. And he communicated to the keeper of the bears, and came back, the translation came back, is that's where people put their cigarettes out. And at that moment, it was like, you can't look away. You just can't look away from this. And my boyfriend said, come on, Jenny, you can't save every animal in the world. Let's go. But something in me at that moment had realized it was the bear, it was the dog, it was the cat, it was us. He was us. And he was suffering. And so, it was a moment of an epiphany. And I realized I had to do something about it. So that story is in the book, and it has a happy ending. I mean, every one of the stories has a positive, inspirational ending, because I don't like to do that to people. I don't like to take people. That doesn't sell books. And as you know, as you read through it, you realize that it took me 24 months. I established a relationship with the government and convinced them that they wanted to have tourists, and if they wanted tourists don't want to see cruelty to animals. They just don't. No one wants to see that. And so I convinced them that we should build the first bear sanctuary. They donated the land. Friends from all over the world, mainly Australia and America, where I have homes in both places, helped me raise the money. And I engaged the help of bear experts in the world, and we built the first bear sanctuary in that country, which still exists. So my friendly bears were moved 2 years after that date, and it's a special story, because it was my story that proved to me that you can do it. You can. I was just anybody who witnessed something that was horrible, and you just have to use your smarts. You have to convince people that something's wrong without offending them so deeply that they turn and look away from you. You want them to embrace your idea to create positive change. And I found that people often do.
Well, throughout your book, you show over and over again how that's so possible and how change can be made, and there is a happy ending to this story, which, is very heartwarming. And I know that people are they're just looking for better ways for animals to be treated, and it feels like as a society we are moving towards that now more than ever. I mean, our young people are more conscious about circuses and maybe places that have orca or other places, like SeaWorld or other animals that are in cage performing, when they should really kind of be in the wild.
Well, absolutely. I think there's power in the collective voice, and that's what's happening right now. We saw it happen very recently in Florida with a vote to end greyhound racing. That was a huge majority of people decided this is wrong, and we just don't want this anymore. And we just saw it in California with a vote there to end the extreme confinement of animals, farm animals used for food. So what people are saying is that this is not a political issue. The only people who think it's okay, to allow cruelty to animals are people who profit, truthfully, and they have the money often to lobby and try to keep things in place as long as their profits continue. But what's happening and what you're seeing is the power of the collective voice, and that is that people are joining force and just saying, no more. This isn't right, and we don't want to participate in it. That goes for people who don't eat meat. It goes for people who choose to eat meat. No one wants to participate in cruelty or eat animals that have been treated cruelly. So it's a good thing. And in this book, you'll see me talk and refer to something that I refer to as the compassion movement, because it's really the collective quest to end suffering for all beings, living beings. That includes people as well. And I think that a lot of people in the world think of themselves, most people, there have been surveys done, that the majority of people, over 90%, consider themselves compassionate. And I think this book gives them permission to follow their instincts and their knowledge and their feelings about what's compassionate and create compassionate change in the world. We can do it. We're doing it.
Mm-hmm. It's happening. Well, and so it makes me kind of wonder, for the people that were featured in your book, what was the thing that made them so either unique or that the story really grabbed you that you said, you know what, this has to be included?
That's a great question. That starts with the fact that this book deal was part of a 2-book deal with my my second book called The Divinity of Dogs. And I had a publisher, there was a bidding war. Hello, how wonderful is that? For it. And then one of the publishers said, we'll give you a 2-book deal, but the second book has to be a memoir. Well, at the time, I'm like, sure, good, fine. And then, so I finished The Divinity of Dogs. It goes out there, and I'm like, a memoir? What am I going to write about? Oh, my God. And I started thinking about it, and I knew that I wanted to write a book that had an impact on people and yet was inspirational. And the bear story, my own personal story about bears, the bears started coming to mind. And then I started thinking about all the people that I work with in the world and have for the past 20-something years. And those people, we haven't mentioned it, but I do a lot of work in Washington, advocating for animals as a volunteer. I'm a volunteer with the Humane Society of the United States. And also in Australia, I work in Parliament, trying to convince leaders here to create change for animals. So basically, my whole life has been about working to create change. And along the way, I have met world leaders, people throughout the world who are specifically often working to help one species. So I put out the call to some of my closest friends, and I asked them, I know you've been doing this forever, but did you have one moment that caused the shift in you, that took you away from something else you were doing in life, and where you said, this is it now. I can't look away from this animal. And, of course, hello, common sense, they all did. And so this book is really, each chapter starts out with a story of mine from a different part of the world, and then leads into a theme of a couple of world heroes who had a similar experience. And we talk about their personal story, with an animal. So that's how this book came about.
That is so fabulous. I mean, because you can see how it all is just woven together so nicely. I mean, you're such an amazing writer. I was just wowed with, oh, yes. I mean, my goodness, I thought the stories were beautiful, and, it offers a lot of hope for people. And it just gives you kind of a moment to pause and reflect on, who it is that we are as a society and where is it we would like to be. And that happens with one person at a time. So we can't control other people, but we can definitely control ourselves and what we choose to do. And I love, how you have persuaded other people to do things that actually improve the lives of animals as well.
Are you talking about that monkey story?
I'm talking about the monkey story. You must have known. Right.
Well, I think when you say persuaded, I think that's a very good example of how we can all work together to create change, but then it's usually one person's voice that can take a situation to the next level. So I was in Flores, Indonesia, which is a remote island, and I had gone with some friends who had promised me they'd take me by boat to see Komodo dragons on a nearby island, something I'd always wanted to do. And when we got to our hotel, we realized that there was and it's a semi-funny story because a friend of mine who is his title is the Earl of Warwick, and he and I are great friends, but at the same time we're on real different pages when it comes to animals and animal welfare. You know, he talks about the hunts in Great Britain, and I talk about not hunting foxes in Great Britain. And so he's very funny. He's very funny, and you'll get the funny twist as you read the story. But we were driving into this hotel, and he announces, "Oh no, it appears we have monkey on the menu." And I'm like, oh no, this is my vacation, please, you know. And sure enough, we get to the hotel, and there is a very small zoo located on the hotel grounds. And there were a bunch of monkeys. I think there were about 12 of them, 15. And they were in this enclosure, and they were all chained around their neck with collars. And then they were all chained again on the wire mesh, and none of them had any place to put their feet down or anything. And they had no water, and they had no food, and there was no feces in their cage, which told me they hadn't been fed. You know, they're not fed regularly, or that place was super clean, which I knew it wasn't the truth. So as my husband John and Guy's partner Nat went off to go to the pool to enjoy an afternoon sunset, I went and checked out this zoo where there was a blind porcupine, and there were geese in this small cage, and I was like, my worst nightmare on vacation. So, a long story short, I met with the manager of the hotel, and who was very willing to talk to me, surprisingly. And I said, "Look, I'm sorry, I can't witness this. This has to change, and I'm here to help you change it. Mm-hmm. What are we going to do about this? What are we going to do about this?" And luckily, people had posted on TripAdvisor for years about what a lovely hotel it was, but the zoo was horrific, and they should shut it down. And when this happens, eventually it works. And so my voice was just that voice that said, "Enough's enough. I'm here to help you." And that's how you approach, and that's how I approached. Try not to condemn them, tell them how horrible they are, but say, "Look, I've got experience in this, and I can help you. Let's get it done." And we got it done. I had to cut a deal to start. I wanted to release those monkeys back into their natural habitat. They had all come from tropical rainforest there, and so therefore they most likely would survive if they were released. And we had to cut a deal that 3 of them had to stay. So we left behind a mother and her babies, because the babies wouldn't have had as much of a chance for survival out there, because that's not where they had been born. And one day, it was one of the highlights of my life. We unchained those monkeys. We cut them free. We crated them, and we took them into the most idyllic location in this jungle, where there were nuts and fruits and a stream, and we released them. And then after the release, I went back and I said, "Well, my job's not over. These enclosures are very bad." So he gave me some staff, and we changed the enclosures. And the monkeys that were left in there were released within the cage, and we put in swings and water and toys. And then I worked with the porcupine, who became a very close friend of mine, to be honest with you. I never knew porcupines were, again, like dogs. And I was actually petting the porcupine before I left. He was lovely. And I gave him a log. He was blind because most likely he had been exposed to the sun day in and day out, and he had never had a log. He had nothing in his enclosure. I gave him a mat and the log and the geese, and helped talk the manager into letting the geese out during the day, and they were swimming in this beautiful pond when I left. But, having said that, I was very nervous that wouldn't continue, and that they would go back to their old ways. And so I checked on them frequently via email with the manager. And then one day he wrote to me and he said, I have good news. I just want to let you know that we no longer have the zoo. We have released all the monkeys. The porcupine passed, and the geese are free and were given to a home where they could roam without affecting the guests. And to me, that, there was that double whammy of it's really hard to leave some animals behind, and there are always deals that are being made, no matter where you are. I mean, I was in Parliament this week and trying to work to end puppy farming, and I can tell you, the deals that are cut, it makes you want to bang your head against a brick wall. It's very disheartening, very disheartening. But when you have an outcome like we had in Indonesia, that was, it just warms your heart, and it makes you realize that you just have to keep going. You have to keep going because it works. Thank you for asking that question.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Jennifer. My goodness, it's such a joy to talk with you. We are going to pause here for a quick break. We've been speaking with Jennifer Skiff in regards to her new book, Rescuing Ladybugs, Inspirational Encounters with Animals That Change the World. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special, when you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 123 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
There are nearly 2 million Americans living with amputation. Many live right here in San Antonio. Becoming an amputee can be scary, frustrating, isolating, but there's no reason to feel alone. The San Antonio Amputee Foundation is here to help support you and guide you toward resources such as home and car modifications and even prosthetic limbs. For more information or to make a donation, visit saamputee.org. We'll help you live a full, active life, one step at a time. San Antonio Amputee Foundation, healing limbs, hearts, and souls.
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with special guest Jennifer Skiff, and she's sharing with us her new book, Rescuing Ladybugs, Inspirational Encounters with Animals That Change the World. Now, Jennifer, you are helping so many people learn a new way of being with animals. And before we left for break, we were talking about how you assisted the management of a hotel shut down that makeshift zoo that they had going on, and kind of teaching them that, the guests that are showing up there, and the reason they're getting so many complaints is because people don't feel that, having animals caged up like that and not taken care of and caged up just to begin with, it's not a cute thing. People don't want to see that. But it's an opportunity for education and to negotiate with people. And I think a lot of times when we think about these kind of things, we don't even consider that there can be negotiations that take place. You're really teaching people that it doesn't have to be an all or nothing, that it can be done in stages.
You're right. And that brings up a beautiful end to that story, which was people. It's usually one person who makes a decision to do this to animals. And you'll find the majority of people are with you and behind you when you're the voice that comes and says, oh, look, not okay. And, I tell this story in the book, but after the release, I get up very early in the morning. So I'm always like, if I'm at a hotel, I'm first one down for a cup of coffee and breakfast or just to chill by myself. And the next morning after that release, I went down and I was having a cup of coffee, and the waitress came up to me and she bowed to me and she said, "Thank you, monkey lady." And she walked away, and I was really moved by that. And then a man came up to me who worked there, and he came up to me and he had this big grin on his face, and he beat on his heart, and he said, "Thank you, monkey lady." And then came this procession. I was the only one sitting in this dining room, and they came out of the kitchen, and a whole procession of people. And now I get teary thinking about it, actually. And they wanted that to happen. They didn't want to lose their jobs, though. They didn't want to speak up. They didn't want to be that one person. They need to feed their family. But in their heart, they knew it was wrong, and it hurt them. It pained them to see what was going on there. There are always beautiful moments, There are always beautiful moments. I'll tell you another funny story, actually. Mm-hmm. I was in Bali, Indonesia, and my husband has a lot of friends, and they do tend to, they're big. They like to party, these friends, and especially when they're up there on holiday. And I tend to, go out amongst the people and do my thing. And I had gone on a day trip, and of course witnessed something horrible. I was driving by just a shop, and this dog was hanging by a chain, and it was. I don't know how it got in this situation, but it was on its tippy toes. And this is a place where, seriously, and I kid you not, like 50,000 people a day drive by on motorbikes and everything. It was a real busy intersection. And so I said to the driver, "Stop." And I went in. I got the dog. I released the dog, and the owner was angry with me, but the dog was being hung publicly. It was horrific. And I got back to the villa where we were staying, and all of our friends are sitting there having cocktails, all laughing, and I walked in, and everybody looks at me and they said, "Did you have a good day?" And I just pulled out of my pocket these chains, and I lifted them up in the air, and I didn't say anything, and the whole crowd started applauding. Yay! Yeah, I mean, they knew just by the chains that someone had been released. So, we have it's a good life. It's a good life, and you are appreciated. And those people are often the ones, I have a charity here in Australia that I do a lot of work for, and I have an annual event called In the Dog House, where I go in the dog house. I go in the kennels, and I get other people to go in the kennels. And those people are often the first to, drop some money into my bucket to say thanks for what you're doing. So, yeah, It's a good feeling helping animals, and that's a good lesson, and something that I want people to know is that when you do good, you feel good, and it's okay to do good, and it's great to feel good.
Well, and on that topic, because I believe this because I had a really close connection with my dog before he passed, but do you feel like animals really have this like telepathic communication with us, this connection with us? And then, and if you feel that they do, why do you think that we have that kind of connection?
I have no doubt that they have the ability to communicate with us in ways that we don't really understand yet. You know it. You know the gift of dog. Most of us know it through the gift of dog, really. Most of the people that I know. And how is that? Well, I think that they activate their sixth sense, and they live by that. We're very disconnected, especially in our generation, our time, because we're connected to devices, and we're not as connected to nature. But anyone, and probably most of your listeners, are very intuitive, connected people. They spend a lot of time out in nature. They're very grounded, and they know that they do have a sixth sense, and they listen to that. And I think animals, because they're on the ground, they're touching the ground, and they rely on every sense that they have. They rely on that next sense as well. I mean, there have been studies about it, and Rupert Sheldrake is one of the people who has done studies on that, and it's common sense to him. And I just think for us, maybe we may never know until we pass from, this life, exactly how it all works. But I don't have any doubt about it myself.
Yeah. I would agree with you on that. I mean, there have been times where, just with my connection with my dog, I mean, he was so in tune with what I was doing. Most of the time, I didn't even need to say anything. He would just look and follow my lead, And it's having this deep heart connection that it feels intuitive when you're with these animals. Kind of like when the bears were showing you their paws, it's like you intuitively knew what needed to happen. You didn't know how it was going to happen, but you knew what needed to happen.
Right. Well, they're connecting. I was reading something recently. There's a friend at the Kelly Peterson at the Humane Society of the United States who started something. I believe she started it called Senses for Fido, and basically what she does is she goes to people who have chained dogs, and they create a fenced-in enclosure for those chained dogs. What they found with this organization is that when people, when they go in and put these animals and dogs in an enclosure instead of on a chain, the people who have the dogs see them differently. And there's a high percentage of the dogs that are then allowed in the house. And I thought that's so amazing. It's that when you view someone, another soul, a certain way, and you confine them, well, you can't see who they really are. You close yourself off to connecting with them. And when they're free and they're happy and they're engaging with you, then they can talk to you. And so I just thought, when you're asking that question, I thought that was something I read recently, and I thought, what an amazing outcome, because it's actually teaching people how to connect with animals on a different level as well.
Well, it seems that you have this just like if you have a superpower, it's being able to look at these problems when we talk about how animals are being taken care of and how they're being treated, and being able to find a way that works for change, for the animals, for people to learn. It's kind of like, you're able to show them that, hey, we can do this a different way that works for everybody. And I so appreciate about that about you. I mean, you really do such a phenomenal job with that.
Thank you very much. I think that it really boils down to, and it's a tool for everyone, is that if you approach with kindness, and compassion for the people, you're going to get them on board a lot quicker than with, anger or frustration. And it's easy to, I bring up Indonesia because I've spent a lot of time up there in Southeast Asia. And it's easy to get very confronting with people and angry with them when you see them with a monkey, exploiting a monkey for money, or even, their civets there that they cage, and it's horrible. But you have to understand that everyone has to eat, and you have to find a way to show them that it's better to earn money another way. You have to be kind and understand. People are trying to feed their families. Every story has another story. It's not. I don't think people want to do this because they want to do it. And and I always go back to the chained dogs because there are plenty of them in America. And it's you never know the circumstances behind situations. I remember once my sister in New Hampshire said, "Can you help me? There's this cat family, and there are cats everywhere, and it's a horrible situation, and it looks horrible, and I don't know what to do about it." And I said, "Well, why don't we go to the door and talk to them?" And she said, I'm afraid, I'm afraid of doing that. Look at the way the house looks on the outside. Look at it. And I just said, yeah, I know. It's scary. It was scary. I said, I'll do it. So we drove up one day, and I walked up, and this gal answered the door, and I said, "Hey, I see you've got a lot of cats here, and I'm wondering, if you want some help. Are they your cats? And, would you accept some help, maybe getting them sterilized? And do you need some help with food?" And she looked at me, and she just stopped for a minute. She just looked through me, and she said, "What are you, an angel?" and I waved my sister up out of the car. And we stood there, and this woman was just so emotional. And she said, "They're all feral cats, and I've been trying my best, and I don't have the money to feed them, and I don't have the money to sterilize them." And then she said, "And here's my pet cat, and he's really, really sick. Can you help me with my cat?" And, we were more than happy to help and make the calls and get the sterilizations done. And so what I'm saying is, you never know. And when you see something that you instinctively know is wrong, well, those are your instincts telling you to act. Try, in my opinion, always try to go with, "May I help you?" Yes, sometimes people are going to say, "Get off my property. I don't want to talk to you." But you know what? Even then, you've made an impact on them. You've given them some food for thought. You've given them something to think about and talk about within their own family. And you've opened a communication for people within their family to talk about it and talk about who feels good about what they're doing and who doesn't. And most often, things result in change when you go out and you follow your intuition. It's your guide. I know you interview people who are mediums and that connect with spirits and all that, but your guidance is your guidance. You can look away or you can act. And I promise you that when you act, you will create positive change.
Well, and it's so empowering to be able to go and speak with somebody and say, hey, do you need help? And that's probably what they need. A person that has a lot of cats, is probably doing that because they want to help. They're trying to figure out a way to help them. But maybe they don't have all the resources to do that.
Mm. Absolutely.
Just in that gentle place where they're trying to figure that out. So, it's really interesting, just our relationship with animals. And there was another story in your book, and there's so many empowering and beautiful stories in rescuing ladybugs. Another one that kind of touched me was when you talked about Royce as a gentleman who had been basically killing an endangered species, a protected species of heron, and just how that story played out. And I don't know if you'd like to share a little bit of that with us today, but just, we don't want to give everything away, but just a little discussion on that so that people can hear more about that. Because I was one that was like, wow, I just sometimes people just don't understand the consequences of what they're doing.
Absolutely. And in a lot of cases, it's tradition within the family when it comes to poaching, So I was working as a correspondent for CNN and doing a lot of wildlife type of stories, and was sent to Louisiana to cover a story about a man named Rolly Foltz, who was a known poacher. And, he had told me he had poached 100,000 animals. I mean, he had these heron. He lived in an area where it was a migration stopover for birds. And he would kill thousands, tens of thousands of birds and night herons in a night, just aiming at the sky when they came in. I don't get it, right? So I went to do this story on this man who had been convicted, and Dave Hall was a federal agent who caught him, and he had a program, and the program was that while in jail, he worked to convert poachers by educating them and telling them that they were actually killing off whole species by doing what they did, and showing them the wrongs of their ways, if you will. And he did convert this man, and that was amazing to me. And I thought, I'm going to tell this story of mine and lead into the most amazing chapter probably in the book, because it tells the stories of a couple of men in the world. Rick O'Barry, who was one of the first dolphin trainers in the world, and after having an epiphany with one of his dolphins, he changed his tune and went on to do what he does now, which is tell the world exactly what happens to dolphins when not only when they're trained, but how they're captured and what's wrong about that. And, he talks about what people don't want to talk about, that they are starved in order to teach them to train. And it just goes on, and how he's just flipped once he had that connection, once he realized that he had been profiting on the exploitation of dolphins, and realized that his intuition told him, now you're supposed to go and tell the world what you've done and take it back. And there's another guy named Dave Pauly, who was a person who made a living killing what some would call nuisance species. So it'll be anything from mice in people's houses to raccoons to beavers. And he made a living. He started very young with a trap and making money, and made his way through college. And then he took a job at a humane society and he had this connection with the beaver. So all of a sudden he was supposed to save animals, and he took home this little beaver kit, and who was really not well, and put him in the bathtub and started giving him his baths, and his dog got involved. And he connected with this beaver, and he saw that he was just like any other child, enjoying the bath, talking to him, communicating with him, telling him when he wanted to eat something, and it changed everything for him. And Dave is now one of the biggest wildlife experts in the world. He's just, and I know him personally, and he is, I've done a ride along with him in Montana, a day in the life of Dave Pauly, where he's rescuing everything from snakes to dogs to ducks, turtles, and it is a real pleasure to see how people can change, and now how he teaches just the opposite. He teaches people how to live and coexist with wildlife. Lovely, lovely chapter, and really that was inspired by the fact that I learned while I was at CNN and doing that story that people can change when they're educated.
And how beautiful is that? And you look at that in his unique perspective, to being able to see both sides. The person that's out there that he was raised early to trap and kill animals, and then moving to working with the Humane Society and becoming someone who is so connected with them that he's saving them now.
He's a great human being, and years ago, I wouldn't have wanted to call him my friend, and I'll tell you, I'm proud to call him my friend.
Yeah. Well, that's just a beautiful story. I'm so glad that you shared that with us. And my goodness, Jennifer, time goes by so quickly. We could talk for hours here. You are just such a light in the world, and I just so appreciate that we've been able to spend this time. Where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community?
That's a nice question. Thank you. Well, I'm on Instagram, and I'm on Facebook with under Jennifer Skiff, author, and I also have a page if you're a dog freak, dog lover like me, called Jennifer Skiff, The Divinity of Dogs, where you can get dog joy. Also, via my website, which is jenniferskiff.com, and you can get the book there. It has many different links on different ways to get it if you're somewhere in the world that's not in the U.S., with free shipping at Book Depository or Amazon, or go to your local library or local bookstore. So those are ways to connect with me, and I welcome, I prefer to, if someone is saying to themselves right now and listening to this, I want to create change where I live, I've seen something, how do I do it? You go ahead and contact me via Jennifer Skiff on the author page. Just send me a message, tell me what's going on, and I will get back to you, and we'll do it together. We'll get it done.
Oh, that is so awesome. So, because I'm sure there are people out there going, I want to do something. Where do I even start? And being able to reach out to you for help, I think that's such a beautiful gift.
Well, thank you. I have the resources, and I know the people, to put them in contact with, but also I'm fortunate. I've had the privilege my whole life of being able to do this on different levels, and sometimes people just reach out to me, and it's about dogs that are chained, and they just want to know how do I go about doing this. And if the talk with an owner doesn't work, then we just move them on to the next step. Call the ranger, or call they call it a ranger here in Australia, which is a nice term. Call the dog officer in your community, and we get the ball rolling, and then you can also create change in your town. Sometimes I'll tell you what, it's a lot easier to create laws where you live in your community than it is federally. So if you want to create laws to protect animals, I'll be more than willing to show you how.
Well, I think that is an amazing place to start because it's making an impact not on just one animal, but many animals at the same time. Jennifer, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you. It was really my pleasure. I really appreciate it. And thank you to your audience, because I know your audience is great, wonderful, compassionate people already doing good in the world. So thank you to all your listeners.
Well, thank you so much, Jennifer. It has been such a pleasure to spend this time with you and, of course, to talk about your new book, Rescuing Ladybugs. Again, if you'd like to connect with Jennifer, you can at her website, jenniferskiff.com. We'll have the link below. Make sure to connect with her and be part of her community. And, of course, you can find Rescuing Ladybugs at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie bookstores. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.